Hello and welcome back to the One Take Show podcast. My name is Kaustav. In this episode, we are in conversation with Mr. Lomesh Kiran Nedumuri. Sir is a partner at Indus Law. In this episode, we talk about his experience in law, his experience with law school, his experience in the initial days of litigation and arbitration. We will learn about how exactly can we carve out a successful career in arbitration, what can we learn from his practical experiences in litigation, and how exactly we can tackle the challenges that come with it. If you like this episode, make sure you like, share and subscribe to the channel. If you have any suggestions or feedbacks, write them down in the comment section. I would love to read them. Hence, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's jump right in. Hello, sir. Welcome to the One Take Show. I am so excited to have this conversation. I'm honored to have this opportunity. I think this is the kind of conversation which was indispensably required on this podcast. Thank you so much for taking time off your really busy schedule and having this conversation with me.
Thank you so much, Kaustav. And as I was mentioning a little earlier, hats off to you for starting this initiative. And as I was telling you, it's unimaginable for me to think about doing something like this when I was in law school. I think the fact that a lot of you guys have become a lot more tech savvy, become a lot more sort of approachable to people in the social media. I mean, it's fantastic. So thank you so much for having me here. It's my pleasure.
So I think the pleasure is all mine. In fact, the pleasure is all for every law student, every student, in fact, who will tune into this conversation. And yes, we are trying to make the best of our times, although more than often we fall handicapped in front of power cuts, as quite recently we have experienced. But as far as this amazing conversation that we have planned here, before we get into that, I think it's extremely important for every viewer of this podcast to learn from your experience. So starting from something that one would call your inspiration to pursue law, how did it all start? What was your story like?
Okay, so I have to go back many years. I was not clear about doing law. I did not have much clarity when I was a 16 or a 17-year-old kid. I loved too many things. I liked a little bit of physics. I liked history. I liked civics. I liked astronomy. I liked military service. I liked sports. So somebody like me could not be pigeonholed into just be doing science, commerce, or law, or whatever it is at that particular point of time. There was a lot of searching that I had to do, which is why I did the 3-year course. I didn't do the 5-year course because at the age of 16, 17, I had absolutely no idea. And I had no godfathers in the legal profession. And this is something that I sort of thought over a period of time. And when I chose to do law, I was very clear that I wanted to be a litigator. What inspired me to do law was, again, I look at law from a very utopian perspective. For me, I was inspired by the fact that the great leaders of our country were all, especially the ones who fought during the freedom struggle, were all lawyers. So I used to read a lot of their books and realize that law was really a means by which they channelized the whole nation and they were able to galvanize the masses and fight against oppression. And that is something that really excited me. The other thing that excited me was, when I was in St. Joseph's Commerce College doing my commerce in my first year, by then I already had some kind of an idea that I wanted to do law. But there were these small booklets of Nani Palkhiwala, which were circulated freely in St. Joseph's. A lot of people didn't even know who Nani Palkhiwala was. And to be honest with you, I just about learned who he was at that particular point of time. I read his books and I read a lot about him. And I think that left a very profound impact on the path that I was going to take. So I was clear at age 19 or 20 that I wanted to take up law and I wanted to be a litigator. I just love the fact that, you could read up a file, you could fight for somebody who's looking for justice, go to court and espouse their cause and ultimately give them justice. I know it all sounds very utopian, but that's just with those notions that I joined the profession.
I think that is absolutely inspirational. There's something that you've said that you've never had a godfather in the legal industry, but you still decided to enter litigation. there must have been some challenges that everyone faces, especially when it comes to law students. Especially the first generation law students, they're rather paralyzed by the idea of litigation being an extremely daunting sort of the first couple of years that come with it. So, what were those challenges that you might have faced, and how did you overcome them?
I mean, one of the challenges definitely to litigation is, obviously, if you have a godfather in the profession, nothing like it. It obviously takes you to a particular level, but it is not necessary that only if you have a godfather in the profession that you're going to succeed.
Right.
Again, I go back to my utopian thoughts of how I was just genuinely passionate about the law. I was genuinely passionate about reading the law. I was genuinely passionate about debating the law and just the whole course of justice to see how things go. And the initial challenges, of course, were that the money was not much. So I had to sort of make a pact with my parents saying that, I'll only be able to contribute this much and I'll be able to take care of only myself. I will not be able to take care of you and take care of any other matters of the house, for instance. I had to make that compromise for a couple of years. But I knew that, at the end of the day, I didn't join this profession with a view to make quick money. And for me, it was just a childlike enthusiasm where I just enjoyed being a lawyer. I enjoyed being the thought of lawyering in court or cross-examining a witness or addressing final arguments or just being before court. I mean, it's just a childlike enthusiasm, just like Sachin. I mean, you ask him to face thousands of deliveries in the net, he's going to do it effortlessly, right? Yes. It doesn't feel like an effort. But for me, being a lawyer feels like something like that. It doesn't feel like an effort. So therefore, the initial challenge of not having much money, obviously over a period of time, that gets watered down, because once you establish your name and you rise in the profession, there is decent enough money for you to sort of live a very, very comfortable life. So that was definitely one challenge. The other challenge which I faced in the very initial stages of my career was, I think it's some pockets of the legal industry, there were people who sort of gave a slightly more weightage to people who came from the NLUs. And because I went to Delhi University, because I had really no choice at the age of 19, 20 when I decided to take law. For the 3-year course, it was Delhi or Bombay, which had the best 3-year law courses. So there was initial bit of bias with some sections of people who said, oh, you're not from NLUs. But trust me, that was only for a few months. Right. It immediately kind of watered down in the next year or so, where after you put in about 2-3 years experience, nobody even asks you which law school you belong to. It ultimately comes down to what experience you have and what kind of relevant experience you have and what is your competence and what is your skill set that you bring to the table. I think people identify and understand that over a period of time.
Right. Because I've had that kind of a conversation. A couple of guests on my podcast themselves have said that there is absolutely no such superior quality to NLUs that somehow give them an edge. And being from not perhaps from the top tier NLU, maybe the top 3 NLU, I also sometimes feel that, okay, maybe there is some sort of a bias or some advantage. But you also talk about quite very positively about this idea of having a utopian concept for law and having that true passion for law. And do you think when it comes back to legal education today, and if you were to advise something to law students who are currently in law school and who are looking at opportunities like litigation, what are those particular virtues, like having passion for law, being one of them? What are those various virtues or skills or your opinion about how can we navigate our way in law school to somehow make ourselves conducive candidates for the industry?
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, Kaustubh. I mean, I can give you advice, but it's not that I have followed most of the advice that I'm going to give you now. But nevertheless, I can look back and probably say I followed some of the advice that I'm going to give you now, and probably should have followed some others which I didn't. One is, when you're reading the law, don't just read the law for the sake of scoring really good marks. Understand the law. Understand the genesis of what the law is. Understand why that section has been drafted into. Why is that statute there in the first place? Understand that law is just not about knowing few sections and ranting out some sections and provisions. It's really about understanding the interplay between various provisions of law and how the multidisciplinary thing comes and brings law into force. So I think that's very, very important. So when you're studying in law school, always try to understand the concepts, because trust me, multi-billion dollars and multi-billion dollar commercial disputes are fought just on the definition of what is a contract. So if you're just thinking about offer and acceptance, if you're thinking about certain case laws and the professor is saying something, you're wondering, man, this is really boring. There have been billions of dollars disputes that have been fought just on whether or not there is a contract that has been executed between the parties. Wow. So when you have your fundamentals strong in law school, what it happens is by the time you pass after 5 years, you have a solid edge over the other people who may not have had the benefit of having utilized the 5 years properly and who then have to play catch up while they're working, which is, I mean, you can still catch up after you sort of, even if you're not read anything much in your 5 years, you can still play catch up, but it becomes much harder. But when you have your fundamentals strong, I think that becomes very, very important. That is one. The second thing is, I would advise law students to not just read about the law, but also read other subjects which can be of varied interests. It could be, it could be philosophy, it could be history, it could be civics, it could be just generally anything and everything. So basically, enrich your knowledge, not just from the perspective of, the law. Obviously, you read autobiographies, biographies of famous authors, famous lawyers, etc. That's something that people must definitely do, because you learn from some of these great people who have walked the corridors of the court or who have been corporate law doyens, to see what are the challenges that they went through. How is it that their life sort of shaped over a period of time? It's important to read that. In addition to that, also read other subjects, because what happens is after a period of time, everybody will know the basic provisions of law, etc. But it's your ability to sort of look at law not just as an isolated subject, but also look at it as an interplay between various other facets of life, is when you can make a very, very good and a nuanced argument before a judge. And that will be very, very easy for anyone to understand and realize that this person is bringing a completely new dimension to this argument, something that nobody else has thought of. And that, I think, comes with a lot of reading. That really helps. And third, of course, your internships, your moot courts. Moot courts, of course, are not an absolute simulation of what happens in court. But of course, it's a good thing, because that's the closest that you'll get to a court. And that's the closest you'll get to researching on a particular point of law and learning how to express it before a jury of lawyers, and how to battle wits with your opponent, who's also sort of read the same brief, who's also read the same case laws as you, and you're trying to get one better than the other. So it's like a very nuanced game of chess in that sense. So it teaches you those skills. Right. And write articles. That is something that I didn't do much in law school, and I wish I had done. But for people who are genuinely interested, they should write more articles and generally think and debate the law. Don't just accept the law for what it is. Think about it, question, see the judgments that come out. You're entitled to voice your opinion as to whether the judgment is right or wrong, and not just take it that this is the judgment. It is also important to have an analytical mind and question things that are around you. Question things as to why things are going in a particular way, as opposed to just being the recipient of knowledge and not really questioning it and not putting it in motion. Because these are skills that will really come into play when you join the bar.
Wow, wonderful. There are so many things that I would love to unpack from this particular segment. I think this will really give an absolute kind of a guidance that every law student needs. Especially, I also somehow need to work a lot, especially when it comes to writing and writing articles is concerned. That is something that I myself am lacking. But when it comes to reading the basics, you said that we need to very single-mindedly focus on covering our basics so that we don't have to play the catch-up once we graduate. There is another sort of a conversation, that a narrative that we come across is that the law school education is not something that we find very useful when it comes to real life practice of the law. And when you hear this kind of a narrative, what is that balance for you, in your opinion, would strike at this stage?
No, I agree with you. I obviously will not be able to comment on how the legal education has kind of reformed now. I do believe that it has to a great extent. But there are a lot of things that, I think the legal education can still reform. One is, of course, to make it as practical as possible. I remember when I went to NYU, when I studied there, the way in which law was taught there was completely different from the way I had studied any of the subjects here in India. The education system was completely different. Students were expected to read, and classroom was just a mode of debating.
Okay.
And I remember when we had the corporation law, which is basically corporate law, I remember every day we were required to carry the Wall Street Journal. And
Okay.
the teacher would, the professor would just pick up one sort of an excerpt from the Wall Street Journal and
Mhm.
just see some headline which is going on there and then say, imagine one of you is on the board of directors of this company. What would you
Mhm.
do? What would you
Right.
advise the board? And this is the fact situation that is there in the newspaper right in front of you. How would you do it? So I think
Mhm.
to make it as practical as possible, because those concepts never go. After a point of
Mhm.
time, you don't need someone to impart the basics of what is an offer or acceptance, for instance. I mean, a candidate should be able to read it pretty much and then debate and analyze those concepts in class. I
Mhm.
think that is something that should happen. And secondly, I think not much emphasis is also given on the softer skills
Okay.
in law school. Everybody is taught to read the law and become great lawyers, etc. But ultimately, a lot of other aspects also need to be sort of given emphasis to, particularly because a lawyer is a multidimensional sort of a personality, because he's
Mhm.
just not lawyering in court. He's also dealing with the emotional and the human side of life. He deals with the
Right.
clients, he deals with the judge, he deals with the opponent, he goes through ups and downs.
Mhm.
Everyone talks about success these days, but nobody really knows how to handle failure. And I think that is an important lesson most of us don't even know. And these are
Mhm.
things that should really be imparted and sensitized in college. Today, everybody talks about becoming winners. Everybody should become a winner. I mean, you are going to end up on the losing side when you're in court,
Right.
which is why I really like this documentary on Netflix. It's called The Losers.
Okay.
It's called The Losers. It's basically a bunch of all these sporting disasters where people have made mistakes. Some of them have never come back from that failure, and
Right.
how they always go back in time and think about how they've lost.
Mhm.
And I think a great amount of wisdom comes when you fail. And students these days and young lawyers these days and some of the older practitioners as well don't really know how to handle failure.
Wow.
And I think that's an important facet of life. Some people get it because of their own maturity, what they go through their personal life, but a lot of other people are just not able to deal with it.
Right.
And I think that is where, I don't know in what form or that can be inculcated into the sort of the legal curriculum.
Mhm.
But I think somewhere, on the softer skill side of it also, lawyers need to be, college students especially need to be a lot more sensitized. That is two. And third, of course, is giving back to the society a lot more. I do
Okay.
believe that law schools today are taking that initiative in doing it. I see a lot of law schools also being extremely active in the arbitration scenario. Somehow, everyone is fascinated about arbitration these days. Everybody wants to become an arbitrator,
Absolutely.
in record 3 years or 5 years time. And everybody, there's a lot of emphasis on arbitration,
Mhm.
which is great. I mean, it's excellent that law schools are taking that initiative. But at the same time, I think people also need to understand that a lot of our profession is also about giving back to the society and giving back to the marginalized section.
Okay.
And that is something that ought to be sensitized again in the law school itself.
Mhm.
Where you realize that ultimately you need to give back. And there's no greater pleasure than when you actually give back to the society in whatever form. if i
Mhm.
if I take a cab to some place, the person sees me in a black coat and a tie, and he starts talking about one of the issues that he's facing.
Mhm.
There's no greater pleasure that I get during the day than to spend just 1 or 2 minutes with him and just guiding him on what he needs to do.
Right.
Because a lot of people don't even get decent and quality advice. The fact that we're able to
Mhm.
contribute in that way itself makes you feel so good. And I think the
Absolutely.
sense of giving back should really
Mhm.
start from law school. And
Right.
because that really sets the foundation for your later years, where you learn
Mhm.
that, this profession is also about giving back as much as possible to the society.
Absolutely. And I think you mentioned how the law schools are all chasing after disputes and arbitration. And quite funny enough, a major section of our conversation actually talks about disputes and arbitration. But there is a very interesting sort of an idea that I could receive from this segment of the conversation was you talk about soft skills that need to be taught to the law students. And my question to that front would be that as a partner, you must be leading a team of juniors where you must see the newcomers entering into the industry where a certain set of skills is expected from them. a certain set of skills that help them somehow to carve out a niche or stand out from the crowd. What are those skills, if you could please point them out, like maybe soft skills or maybe other such set of skills that you might have recognized as useful that the juniors can
Sure,
somehow incorporate?
sure. I mean, people have different personalities, right? People have different shades of it. Some people display certain shades, some people display the other shades of it. Personality is something that's very innate and very unique to each person. But I've always believed in this mantra, and this is what I look for in other people as well. As long as you're a good human being and you're good to people around you, and you're good to people who are not as privileged as you are, I think you have set the standard on how you should be leading your life as a lawyer and as a person. And when you work in a law firm, and when I lead my team of colleagues, that is the first basic attribute that I look for in a colleague, whether that person is genuinely sort of has good intentions and has a good heart. And if that person is going here and there in terms of behavioral patterns, etc., that can always be corrected. But if you don't have this basic requisite, anything else that you try to sort of mend or tamper around with is not really going to help. So what happens with being a good person at the end of the day is ultimately we is greater than I. That's the mantra that we follow in our team and in our firm. So that is, the team is always greater than an individual. And that is the sense of teamwork that is expected of any sort of a new person who comes into the team, saying that, you'll always work for the team first. We are here as a team. And if we win something, we all succeed together. If we fail, we all tank together with that. So I think teamwork skill is very, very important. Communication, how you communicate with the senior management, how you communicate with your colleagues, that also becomes very important. How you communicate with clients. Communication, again, is a very, very big skill that is required. And in addition to that, I mean, the usual, skills of when it comes to your lawyering, etc. That is obviously on the, the harder aspects of things, but more on the soft skills is what we're speaking about.
Right. Perfect. I think as a law student who's also somehow trying to enter the industry, having those incorporated those skills which can help us somehow become or get on somehow a better position when it comes to competition or making ourselves conducive to the industry. Any such advice that we can receive from leaders and luminaries in this field is going to help us long way. When it comes to the knowledge that we receive as law students, especially when it comes to the textbook knowledge with respect to either dispute resolutions or litigation, the textbook knowledge is something that is not necessarily applied in the real world. And who better to learn about the real world, the practical application of this knowledge, but from you, sir? So could you please give us a little bit of an insight as to what exactly is the practical application of knowledge that we receive from textbook, especially when it comes to dispute resolutions or litigation?
Sure. I mean, obviously, when it comes to practical application of what you studied in law school, what you read in law school, usually they say whatever you studied in law school, and when you pass and when you join the profession, you start with a absolutely clean slate. It's like a blackboard which is blank, which is why it becomes a leveler, because no matter which law school you come from, everybody congregates at the same place, and everybody is been given a sort of an empty blackboard to sort of fill and chart out whatever they can sort of chart out and what they have learned. Obviously, the practical application of your textbook knowledge is different from what you study. You can't be too bookish, but at the same time, there is no harm in knowing your textbooks really well and understanding the fundamentals of law clearly, and then looking at practical ways of applying it. Because if you don't even have the basic sort of concepts in your head from the books, your application, when you try to apply it, when you join the profession, becomes very weak. Some people try to get out of it by speaking really well. They're able to do it with a little bit of court craft, etc. But over a period of time, people are able to see through the fact that this person doesn't have much stuff. He's only good in so far as speaking and convincing the audience is concerned. But that is not a long-term solution. So obviously, having good knowledge from your books is important. But at the same time, once you join the profession, don't just rely on your skill of knowing a textbook, because the practical aspects of law are completely different. What you learn from application of law is purely from experience, and experience of your own experience of having read the file, of having to see how the judges have interpreted it, to see the judgments that come out, to see lawyers, how they have interpreted those provisions. briefing your senior within the office or your senior partner within the office to see what are the insights. I mean, that is where your practical knowledge gets tested. And so that is point one. The second point is there are always two facets of being a good litigator. One is, of course, your substantive knowledge of law. Secondly, the practical aspects of law, which is your civil procedure. Application has to be filed in this manner, then it will go for this, then knowing the procedures, how it goes in court. Again, in order to be a really good lawyer, it is good to have both of these aspects, working in tandem and being really good at both. A lot of times what happens is people are not good in their substantive knowledge of law and focus only on the practical aspects of how the procedural aspects of law work. They'll be in a position to tell you the so-and-so provision of the CPC, you file this application, and then it'll go for objections, and then it'll go for this. They're able to narrate the entire thing. But when it comes to actual arguments of that suit or that application, where you have to apply your substantive knowledge, they're found wanting.
Right.
So if you ask me a trade-off, if at all there has to be a trade-off, I mean, I would say that it has to be in equal measure, knowing both the skills. If there has to be a trade-off between the two, it is better to trade the procedural aspects of the law in favor of the substantive knowledge of the law. Because a person with a substantive knowledge of law, by not knowing much procedure, will still be able to sail through much better than a person who knows only procedural but does not have the substantive law. But of course, it is good to merge the two. And when you join the bar as a lawyer, keep your skills and whatever knowledge you've learned from law school, but always remember that just bookish knowledge is not going to obviously help. Learn to apply the law, learn to apply it in practice and see how it goes, particularly when it comes to cross-examination. I've had people joining our office saying that I don't know anything about cross-examination, and the only thing they know about cross-examination is by reading books. Cross-examination is one skill which you can read as many books as you want. You know the basics of leading questions, when to not to ask leading question, etc., all that. But your skill of lawyering for cross-examination or arguments or whatever it is gets tested only with experience.
Right.
There will be times in court where you have faltered, you would have made a mistake. You'll realize it hard the next time, and some arguments you would have thought on the spot, you're able to do something. So I think it's knowledge mixed with experience that makes a person a really sort of a potent combination, and that's work in progress for people at all levels. It's work in progress for me as well. I'm still trying to learn the ropes of it.
Right. Things are improving. I think with that idea to be somehow the cornerstone of my next and perhaps one of the last questions to you is that all of these changes that we keep happening around us, especially with the opportunities that are now opening up because of the pandemic, the technological changes that are now happening, all those juniors who are or the law students who are to enter the industry, who are to follow your footsteps, who are to now somehow make their mark in this industry, find jobs, get into this entire market, what suggestions would you have? How can we become more able when it comes to exploiting the various opportunities that are before us?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think it's important to realize and identify what is the area of law in which you want to practice. A lot of people are confused between dispute resolution or corporate law. I think when you do a lot of internships, you get a lot more clarity on what you want to do. Going back to my life story, I was very clear, age 19, inspired by Nani Palkhiwala, inspired by all the great people, and particularly by the fact that I loved debating, and I've always been a debater all my life. So those are things that naturally sort of spurred the thought of me wanting to be a lawyer. So people need to go back to what their inner feelings is about what is it, why is it that they chose law, and choose the right sort of either litigation or whatever it is. The moment you have identified that, then work towards seeing what are the opportunities that are available within that horizon. For instance, the reason I'm saying this is usually what people do is they think that, oh, so-and-so area is very niche, it is a coming up area, so therefore I will take it, without knowing head or tail about what it is. A lot of lawyers come to me and say, I want to be an IP lawyer, or I want to be a tax lawyer. In the third or fourth year of law, or just after they join their practice. These are people who have never been exposed to any such litigation. These are all just some concepts which they get maybe because they saw somebody doing really well, or maybe because they saw some television show or whatever it is. You're always sort of influenced by things that you see around you. It's important to make an honest and a correct assessment of what is it that you want to do. If you've decided to do something, even if it is not a commercially viable thing in that sense, during those particular times, you should still go ahead and do it, because eventually you will get rewarded in some way or the other. I think that's an important advice, because you asked me what are the steps that you need to take. The first step is really to sort of identify your strengths, identify what your passion is, follow it, and then try to figure out what opportunities there are. In terms of what opportunities there are and what is it that you can exploit, I think you guys are a lot more adept at doing it. I have kind of become outdated now. I really don't know much about, what really is an upcoming thing in that sense. But of course, since you had earlier asked me about arbitrations as well, and I'm happy to speak about arbitrations if you wish. That is something that I see a lot of interest from students from.
Right.
But what the students need to realize is that arbitration is nothing but a case before a city civil court, which has got pushed and brought before a sophisticated, in most cases sophisticated, arbitral tribunal. So your principles of law and your appreciation of evidence and the principles that you bring to a table when you're prosecuting a suit is the same thing that you would when you're prosecuting an arbitration claim. There is no difference at all, except obviously the fact that arbitration is a lot more informal, and you're not really bound by CPC, and there's no time for filing objections to this. Procedurally, those things go. But in terms of your ability to appreciate the evidence, your ability to understand the nuances of what evidence is there, what is it that you need to do, whether you should, lead further evidence, how to cross-examine a witness, how do you lead final arguments in an arbitration, those principles are very akin to a civil court claim. So ultimately, if you're looking at a career in arbitration, you should really sort of look at getting your fundamentals of your civil law in order, because ultimately those skills are the ones which will help you become a very good arbitration lawyer.
Right. I think that is absolutely necessary, because as law students and as arbitration is becoming an extremely attractive field, a constant question in our minds is, how do we become good at arbitration, or how do we somehow take this textbook knowledge that we have into the practical application and somehow become adept to the situation. Have you been asked this question, how can law students become better at arbitration per se, since you say that
absolutely,
Please.
That's right. I mean, I do get this question a lot, and a lot of people have asked me this, and my answer is the same. Ultimately, I can give you some practical examples. For instance, people have a perception that somebody who's able to speak really well about the Arbitration Act, eventually is automatically, a good arbitration lawyer as well. There are two different aspects of it. Arbitration Act is just the procedural aspects of the Arbitration Act and how the award would take place, what are the grounds for appeal, Section 9, blah, 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 all those procedural things. But ultimately, once it goes before an arbitrator, the dispute has to be decided in accordance with law. And when you have to decide the dispute in accordance with law, all your facets of how to draft your pleadings properly, how to collate evidence properly, what are the kind of documents that you ask the client, after the documents are given to you, how is it that you analyze it? You have to analyze it keeping in mind the law that is there behind. What do you produce? What do you not produce? What is it that you hold back for cross-examination later for, rebuttal evidence, or it could be by virtue of confronting a witness? What are the strategies that you adopt for cross-examination? How do you conduct cross-examination? What are the questions you should ask? How to ask a question? What type of a witness it is? These are all skills that you learn on the job. And I've been extremely fortunate in that sense, because I've worked with some of the best in the industry when it comes to cross-examination. And cross-examination is something that people don't understand really well. And I must say most lawyers who are practicing today are not really adept at handling cross-examination. I was fortunate enough to have seen two legends in the bar. One is Mr. KG Raghavan, who's a senior counsel. I was earlier, 13 or 14 years ago, I was his junior in Dua Associates, and fantastic in cross-examination. And then later when I joined Indus Law, the senior partner of Indus Law, Mr. Srinivas Raghavan, who's now become a senior counsel and no longer attached to the firm, just to watch these guys go about the cross-examination and go about the whole trial and the arguments was just phenomenal. And which is why I think the arbitration is a great tool in that sense, because it really gives the ability for a junior lawyer to take on a senior counsel. because there is no question of face value before an arbitrator. An arbitrator is deciding everything on the basis of what documents there are and what law is applicable on that aspect. Of course, a senior counsel will be able to give certain nuanced arguments based on his experience, but it is not the same as when you're appearing against a senior counsel, let's say in a writ jurisdiction, where the question is whether the stay should be granted or not.
Okay.
You know, the judge may be sort of, oh, there's a senior counsel on one side, there's a junior on the other side. Maybe the senior counsel, you know, is bringing so much of experience and he may be able to get something, his court craft, etc. And he may sort of pull one against you purely because of his experience. But you cannot do the same thing before an arbitral tribunal. It does not come down to how well you can articulate, etc. Of course, articulation is important, but it really comes down to the entire process of arbitration and whether you have covered the tracks there. And that really makes it a very attractive sort of a proposition for younger members of the bar, you know, to sort of show their skills against slightly more senior sort of members on the other side of the bar, as long as they have read the file completely and as long as they have understood the basic ropes of, you know, how to conduct the case completely.
Right. Absolutely perfect. I think this is the kind of understanding that is indispensably required, especially when it comes to the knowledge that needs to be disseminated amongst the law students. And I'm really fortunate enough to have this opportunity to have this conversation in the very first place, and to take such kind of a conversation to every law student who tunes into our podcast. It has been perhaps one of the best conversations that I've had, and I'm truly grateful for this opportunity, sir. Do you have any closing remarks for our listeners?
Yeah, I mean, thank you so much, Costa, for having me here. And I'm happy to guide you anytime you need any sort of a guidance. Please feel free to reach out. And thanks for having me here. And the reason I chose to come here on your platform is just so that, you know, I am able to sort of disseminate as much information, whatever little that I know, to impart it to law students, because I have made quite a lot of mistakes along the way. But the good thing is I have learned from my mistakes. They say that a wise man never repeats the same mistake more than once. Right. And I have been hardened by experience from whatever I've seen, the ups and the downs, both in the profession and personally in my life. And I think at the end of the day, you emerge as a much better person and as a much better lawyer. And if whatever little that I can share from my limited experience, and if it benefits even 1% of the viewers, I'll be very sort of happy. And I would think that the goal has been achieved in that sense. So I wish you all the best, Kaustav, and thanks again for having me here.
Thank you so much, sir. I think I speak for every law student who perhaps will tune into this episode, that learning from your experience, learning about the various nuances of this industry, learning about your experience in the law school, outside the law school, in litigation, in disputes, talking about those utopian, passionate principles of how one should approach law as a subject, and everything has been absolutely enriching. And this is the kind of conversation which will really add value to everyone who will listen to this conversation. Thank you so much, sir. I had a wonderful time speaking with you. I hope you had a good time.
Likewise. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Kaustav. Yeah, take care. Bye.
Thank you, sir.